Kevin Siepley. I'm the President and Dean of Ave Maria School of Law, and it's my pleasure to be here with Antoinette Hornsby. Antoinette is a graduate of our law school. She graduated in May 2017 and just sat for the Florida bar. Antoinette is one of our top students, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind as she moves out into the legal community, she's going to be an excellent attorney and a supreme ambassador for our school. The reason why we're here today is because Antoinette's husband, Brian Hornsby, was shot down and killed outside of Kandahar, Afghanistan on August the 16th, 2012. He was piloting a UH Black Hawk helicopter serving in the Army in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. On behalf of the entire law school community, Antoinette, I want to say that we're very sorry for your loss and your children's loss and Brian's family's loss. And I want to thank you and your family for Brian's service to our country and the ultimate sacrifice that he made to our country.
Sure, thank you.
Brian Hornsby was born on August 19, 1975 in Zaragoza, Spain, and I understand he comes from a large military family.
That's correct. His dad was in the Air Force.
His dad, Glenn, was in the Air Force for 22 years. He actually retired, and he was a Vietnam veteran. Is that right?
That's also correct, yes.
Yeah. And his wife, Brian's stepmother, Donna, also served in the Air Force.
Yes, they were actually both in Spain at one time when Brian was there, yeah.
Okay, and that's the reason why Brian was born in Zaragoza, Spain, is because his father was stationed over there.
Yes, he was there with the Air Force.
And Brian also has two uncles that served in the military. His uncle Roger was in the Air Force, and his uncle Daryl was in the Army.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. And I understand that his dad, Glenn, and his stepmother, Donna, live near the school here?
Yes, they both live in Lehigh Acres, which is about an hour north of here.
Okay.
And that's where I live also with the kids.
Oh, good. And his mother, Judy, lives in South Carolina?
That's also correct, yes. And his brother, Shannon, as well, lives in South Carolina.
Okay. And he has two siblings?
He has two siblings. His sister, Christy, lives up in Tampa.
Okay. And I know that Brian was a graduate of University of South Florida? That's
correct. He attended the Fort Myers campus prior to going into the military.
Okay. And he went into the military in 1998?
That's correct. He initially started off as a military police, but yes, it was in 1998.
And then from military police, he went to the aviation branch?
That's right, over in Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Okay. And when he was killed, Brian was actually a Chief Warrant Officer 3?
Yes.
And he was assigned to Alpha Company, 2nd Battalion, 25th Aviation Regiment, 25th Combat Aviation Brigade, 25th Infantry Division out of Schofield Barracks,
That's
Hawaii.
Correct, yes. He flew, I mean, the aviation branch was in Wheeler Air Force Base, but it's all right there in Schofield Barracks.
Yeah, it was assigned to Schofield, but actually all the aviation facilities are located on Wheeler Air Force Base, which is right across the street from Schofield Barracks.
Right.
Yeah, very good. Well, can you tell us a little bit about how you and Brian met and where you met at?
Sure. So I met Brian when he was stationed in Fort Polk, and that's in Louisiana because I'm from Louisiana. And I met him when he was in military police, an MP, prior to him going, into Fort Rucker, into aviation. And he used to come into the restaurant that I worked in with a bunch of his friends and charm everyone around him. And I guess he charmed me as well.
And when were you married, and where were you married at? We
ended up getting married we were officially married in 2006, prior to him going to Honduras, and I was finishing up school. And then we had a big celebration in Lehigh Acres at his parents' house, actually. They have some land there, so we had a celebration there, and that was in 2007.
So you have two children. I met your children. Can you tell us a little bit about your children?
Sure. So I have Layla, who's my 8-year-old. She's going into 3rd grade. And then there's Brady, who is my rambunctious 7-year-old going into 2nd grade.
Excellent. If someone never met Brian, can you describe his personality? Who was he as a person?
Sure. So Brian was very reserved to people who didn't know him. I think some people may even describe him as somewhat shy if you didn't know him. But once you got to know him, he was very charming, very funny. He liked to laugh. He enjoyed spending a lot of time with friends and family. But at the same time, he managed to balance work with the family life, and he took his profession very seriously.
If Brian had some type of motto in life, what would you say was his motto?
So Brian didn't have mottos necessarily when he was here with us, but I guess the closest thing that I could kind of say, okay, well this reflects his view, is one of the last conversations I had with him during that last year was this conversation where he told me, if anything happens to me, don't let the kids grow up to be victims. And I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but what he was trying to say is that everybody has a sad story, and that's what he said. He's like, everyone has a sad story, but it's how you use the situation, and that defines you. So we could choose to be victims, or we can choose to make the best of the situation, and I think that's the closest thing to a motto that he has, and it also reflects how I try to raise the kids.
Why do you think he was called to military service?
Well, his dad was in the military, and so I think that kind of exposed him to it. But he always had a dream of flying. He didn't necessarily know that he was going to fly Blackhawks, but he fell in love with Blackhawks, obviously. And so I think he just enjoyed having that opportunity to be around, to be in that leadership role, to have camaraderie with his fellow soldiers, to get paid to do what he loves. I mean, it takes a special personality to really be excellent. At flying helicopters, you almost have to be an alpha personality. And Brian really embraced that. He felt very lucky being allowed to get paid to fly, to do his dream.
Was flying what you feel like he really loved about the military experience?
Absolutely. I think, and I know this, I've encountered a lot of his fellow soldiers who would say that he had, and I know this just from being at home, that he took every opportunity he could to be in the air. I mean, he loved to fly. If you didn't want to be on that mission, he's going to take that mission for you. And that was the whole time.
And his reputation was actually he was a very good pilot.
He was an excellent pilot. He was, that last year, he was the head instructor pilot for the company, and that's a leadership position. And he took that role also very seriously, and he loved it.
You talked about camaraderie. How important were his fellow soldiers to his life and the whole esprit de corps of the military?
Well, when he was alive, you don't really think about that so much, like you realize that you're surrounded by a lot of people and friends that are in the military life and that kind of thing, and I knew that he had his close friends. But more so after the crash, and I guess the people who came forward, I mean, to me, that was when I realized how important he was and how close he was with so many people, and so how the impact he left on so many lives. For example, when I had to go to Dover to bring him home, or when they flew him home, there were two soldiers who he was very close with from Germany, from when we were stationed in Germany, and they flew to Dover to be with me whenever Brian came home.
Wow, that's very powerful. Right. A great statement of how much they felt to Brian, or how close they felt to Brian. And I'm sure that was great support for you too at a very difficult time.
It was, and it meant a lot. It meant that it was good. I mean, especially at a time when you have a hard time asking for help. Mm-hmm. Because you just don't know what to do. It's chaos. Sure. But they really came forward and stepped up. And I would even go so far as to say, because we go to Arlington. Brian is buried at Arlington. And even my most recent visit, I met somebody who he worked with in Honduras. And this particular soldier told me it was his first time that he had to muster up the courage to go visit Brian. So to me, that's also just indicative, I guess, of the reach that Brian had with his fellow soldiers.
How do you as a family keep the memory of Brian alive and at the same time muster up the strength to move forward in your lives?
Well, the reason I moved to Lehigh, aside from coming here to law school, is that Brian's family's here. not just Glenn and Donna, but also the entire Hornsby clan, which is quite large. Okay. And so that was very important for me to have the kids in a setting where Brian used to be surrounded by people who knew him very well. And in a way, we talk about him so regularly, and we're in his home. Or the kids, the grandparents live right there where we got married. So it's almost like a blended family in a way, the way that I incorporate his family into how I parent the children and how we keep his memory alive. So that's one way. And then on top of that, the kids go to the Good Grief Camp with TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, and that's up in DC. Okay. And that's an opportunity for them to really deal with grief, but also to be surrounded by other survivors and other kids. And Brian's there in Arlington, so it's a time for them to go over there, grieve, talk about him a little bit more in a safe zone.
On behalf of the entire community and everyone associated with our school, I once again want to say thank you to your family for the service that Brian and the sacrifice that he gave to our country, and just what a great example you are and your family is to our school and our community. And it's a pleasure to get to know you better, and I'm very proud of you, Antonette, and I look forward to watching you have a great legal career, and I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you very much.